specifically a gentleman named Jimmy Duhon in Louisiana. This is another purported Bigfoot image that doesn't appear terribly striking or impressive at first glance, but becomes more so upon closer examination. And that's actually a fairly unique quality among purported Bigfoot images.
Walking around, and then I started hearing it breathing. It was going.
In this episode, we uncover 6 of the most terrifying encounters ever recorded deep within the Appalachian forests. Real footage, first-hand accounts, and chilling evidence that blurs the line between legend and reality. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. Footage courtesy Animal Planet. In a region not typically associated with Bigfoot sightings, reports are flooding in. And judging by the number of hands raised, something unusual is happening here. A man recalls his strange encounter just north of town in a small area called Ridgeville. It was early morning, still dark, and he was doing his usual paper route, driving alone along a quiet road. As he came around a corner and pulled up to a mailbox to drop off a newspaper, something unexpected happened. A large figure stepped out near the edge of the road, right in front of his car. At first, he wasn't sure what he was looking at, but as it turned to face him, he saw it clearly. The creature was huge. He said its shoulders were extremely wide, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It stood tall, silent, and still.
It occurred in a town north of me in Ridgeville. I was delivering newspapers real early in the morning, and I was driving around the corner, and I come up to a tube to put the paper in, and I saw this thing. Turned around, looked at me, and it was big. I mean, it had shoulders were at least like this.
Then it locked eyes with him. He described the feeling of that eye contact as deeply unsettling. He didn't just feel watched, he felt like the creature was angry, like he had interrupted something he wasn't supposed to see. His hands were shaking. Since fear is already shown, his hands were shaking on the wheel. Even after putting distance between himself and the creature, he couldn't calm down. To this day, he remembers the look in its eyes, and the feeling that whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen.
Just freaked me out because I got the feeling that it was kind of angry. I was like disturbing it kind of, and I just floored it and got out of there. I was kind of shaken up.
But what was it? Why was it there, alone, in the dark, standing in the middle of a quiet road no one else was on? Was it just passing through? Or has it been here all along, watching from the woods? The man never went back to that route again, and he's not the only one with a story. What hides in the shadows just beyond Ridgeville? Not far from Ridgeville, another local resident shares a chilling story of his own encounter. This witness, a longtime hunter, recalls a night deep in the woods when something unusual crossed his path. Unlike the man's sighting near the road, this one happened far from any signs of civilization. The hunter described hearing heavy footsteps and a low, guttural sound before catching a glimpse of a massive, shadowy figure disappearing between the trees.
Pretty much every day. I have been doing it for over 10 years, and around 11 o'clock one night, I had a road crossing. And I mean, it maybe took 2 or 3 steps, it was across the road, but I was within 40 feet of it. What struck me was the height of it. I mean, the thing must have been 8 to 8.5.
It was unlike any animal I've ever seen, he said. It moved with a strange, almost unnatural silence, but its size was impossible to miss. Stories like these raise questions about what might be lurking just beyond the edges of the known, and whether these encounters are connected. But that wasn't the only time something like this was seen. Another encounter, even darker, would soon follow. Footage courtesy Travel Channel. Deep in the dark wilderness, the man thought he was alone until he heard it. Footsteps, heavy, cautious, and too intentional to belong to an animal. Around 12:14 a.m., the stillness broke as something unseen began moving closer to his camp.
About a half hour in, I heard the footsteps again.
A heavy silence settled. Footsteps returned, slow, deliberate, inching toward the trap. Each step pressed deeper, as if guided by something unseen. Then, just before, they stopped. Not close, not distant, just beyond reach. Waiting, listening, as if something shadowed was deciding whether to reveal itself or vanish into the darkness.
I could hear it coming closer to the trap. But whatever it was, it stopped well before it got there.
What was it? Hiding just beyond the edge of the camp. Something invisible reached out and grabbed a small tree branch, moving slowly and carefully. Why was it swinging the branch back and forth, over and over again? The dry crack of branches broke the quiet, heavy silence. Then, suddenly, the branch jerked hard, like it was held by cold, invisible hands. A shadow moved just beyond the trees, watching with eyes you couldn't see. The air grew cold and heavy, pressing down on him like it was alive, quietly warning him he didn't belong here. Something old and dangerous waited in the darkness.
And started swishing it back and forth. And this thing's just going back and forth, back and forth. It seemed like something didn't want me there.
It crept silently around the back of the tent, every step deliberate and slow, as if hunting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike from the shadows. Inside, the camper's breath caught, his heart beating fast as fear made him freeze, eyes wide, stuck in the quiet that felt like something was watching nearby.
A bear can't throw things. My dad didn't wake up. It was unbelievably terrifying. There was something smart out there, specifically targeting me and trying to mess with me.
What was that sharp, chilling sound cutting through the stillness of the night? And where did that sudden scream come from, as if something unseen was watching, waiting just beyond the shadows? Hours later, miles away, another witness would experience a night she'd never forget. What began as harmless laughter quickly turned into pure terror. She remembered they had been horsing around, laughter filling the air, when suddenly the first scream grabbed through the night, sharp, urgent, and full of terror. Without a sound, her aunt moved silently from the living room to the bedroom, her heart pounding as she gripped the cold rifle. Every shadow felt like a threat, every breath heavy with dread, waiting for the danger lurking just beyond the door. She suddenly realized, oh God, something was terribly wrong. The large picture window was draped with thin, sheer curtains that barely concealed the shadowy shapes lurking just beyond, their unclear outlines twisting in the dim light like silent threats. When the creature kept pounding on the house, making a loud, scary noise, their hearts were racing fast with fear. They screamed as loud as they could, trying to keep up with the frightening sounds coming from outside. Something is out there, silent, watching, waiting. The question is, how close is it tonight? Footage, courtesy DMAX UK. The team travels to Virginia to investigate recent Bigfoot sightings reported by locals. They become especially interested in the encounter of a young girl who claims to have seen a Sasquatch near her home. He recalled being a child, playing outside late one night. Thinking it would be fun, he ran toward the end of the road, planning to surprise his mom. But as he came around the end of the building and started up the road, he froze.
Little, and we were playing outside late one night, and I figured I'd run around the end of the road and catch my mom and scare her at the end of the road.
Something was there. He looked up, and it was staring right at him. In the dim glow of the streetlight, he could see its long arms stretching out from the shadows. The thing was massive, far bigger than anything he had ever seen. Their eyes met, cold and empty, like looking into a dark hole. Its long twisted arms slowly emerged from the shadows, reaching like living shadows. The creature's huge dark shape seemed to swallow the night, a presence more frightening than anything he had ever known. What quiet, dark fear waits just beyond the trees, hiding in the shadows, ready to move?
When I come around the end of the building, started up the road, I looked up at it, it was looking at me. You could see long arms on it through the shadow of the lights. The thing was huge.
Heavy footsteps circled him, crunching softly over the dirt and leaves. Then came the breathing, slow, deep, and ragged, so close he could almost feel it in the air. He heard something else, buried in the heavy breathing, a voice. Low, harsh, and angry. It didn't speak in words he could understand, but it growled through the silence, deep and unnatural, like it wanted him to hear it. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just nearby. It was hunting, and it was looking for him.
Then I started hearing it breathing. It was going. This thing was looking me eyeball to eyeball.
Me and a buddy of mine went down to Abrams Falls. He had never seen the falls, so I decided, I'd take him down and show him what it looked like. We seen this thing stand up. It blew at us, which was like an elk call. I know what I seen.
Bobo, Cliff, and the team were heading to meet Debbie and Kirsten. Kirsten recalled that one quiet morning, as she went to pick up the mail, she caught sight of a mysterious creature lurking just to her right, an eerie presence that sent a chill down her spine. She recalled her encounter clearly. Walking down the hill with her music blasting, she was on her way to get the mail. As she climbed back up, a sudden movement caught the corner of her eye. She turned slowly and froze. A tall figure stood silently, watching her with an unsettling stillness. Panic grew through her, heart pounding as fear took hold. Without thinking, she screamed and ran up the hill as fast as she could.
Full volume, and I was going to go get the mail. And as I'm coming up from the hill, I noticed it right out of the corner of my eye, and I looked over and I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's something standing there watching me. And it really scared me. I ran up the hill screaming. And as soon as I got up to the house, caught my breath, started crying because I've never seen anything.
When the investigators asked Kristen what she first thought the figure was, she admitted her mind raced to make sense of it. At first, she assumed it might be a man, tall, still, maybe just standing there watching. But something didn't feel right. The size, the shape, the way it stood so unnaturally still. Her breath caught. Oh my gosh, she thought, that's Bigfoot. But what exactly did she see that day? And was it really a Bigfoot? Could something that large and that quiet truly be out there, silently watching from the shadows? Footage courtesy, Cabin in the Woods. The photo came from the Duhan family, specifically a man named Jimmy Duhan, deep in the woods of Louisiana. At first glance, the image doesn't appear especially remarkable, but when examined more closely, subtle and unsettling details begin to emerge. Details that some believe point to the presence of a creature long thought to be a myth. Most of these photos show exactly what you're meant to see right from the start. Clear, obvious shapes or figures that stand out immediately.
Specifically, a gentleman named Jimmy Duhan in Louisiana. This is another purported Bigfoot image that doesn't appear terribly striking or impressive at first glance, but becomes more so upon closer examination. And that's actually a fairly unique quality among purported Bigfoot images.
Many fake or hoax images share this same quality, making them easy to spot because they don't leave much to the imagination. Captured during broad daylight, the image reveals what appears to be a tall, bipedal figure standing just to the left of a grayish-green hunting blind.
Show exactly what you're supposed to see in an obvious way right off the bat, and I think many hoaxed images have that quality as well. This one, on the other hand, appears like nothing at first, but becomes increasingly compelling as you look closer, both literally and figuratively.
At first glance, it's easy to miss, but the shape is there, still and upright. Adding to the eerie atmosphere, several crows or ravens are seen feeding in the foreground, as if unaware, or perhaps drawn to, something just beyond the ordinary. Was it just a trick of the light, or did something unnatural step into view? What do you think? There was something off about the figure, something that didn't sit right.
Triggered during the daylight hours, and it captured what appears to be a bipedal figure standing to the left of this grayish-green hunting blind. Coincidentally, we see several crows or ravens feeding in the foreground.
Its build was too broad, too heavy, and its body didn't move like a person's. It stood in a strange, wide-legged stance, almost unnatural, like it wasn't meant to walk the way we do. Its arms hung low, far too long, adding to the eerie, almost distorted look of the creature.
Whatever this creature was doesn't appear to have the proportions of a human. It seems too bulky and oddly shaped. It's got this weird bow-legged stance, which isn't comfortable or typical for most humans, and it appears to have exceptionally long arms compared to human limb ratios. The hunting blind is extremely helpful in providing a rough scale, and shortly after this image was initially released to the public, the crew of the show Finding Bigfoot analyzed the site in person.
So what exactly are we looking at here? Coincidence, costume, or something real? Still, there's no denying how strange the figure beside the picnic table appears. Its shape is unusual, and oddly enough, the muscle definition along the back looks almost too precise to ignore. Could someone have staged this? Possibly. But if it were just a hoax, wouldn't the photo show something clearer? Something meant to convince beyond all doubt?
This is an odd-shaped something next to this picnic table with strangely specific and anatomically correct back musculature. Could it be a hoax? Absolutely. But if you were setting out to create a Bigfoot hoax image, wouldn't you capture something a little more conclusive than this?
The figure appears to be clothed in a thick, pale coat of fur, short but dense and unnatural in appearance. It's a subtle detail, yet one that feels oddly deliberate, almost too strange to ignore.
It appears to be coated in thick, whitish fur, although not particularly long fur, which is interesting and suggestive. As I did my initial examination of this photo, preparing my thoughts to make this video,
could those shapes actually be feet bent in a kneeling position? It's hard to say for sure. Maybe it's just my mind filling in the blanks, or maybe there's something more to see. Given the depth of this analysis, it's hard to simply label these claims as misunderstandings or falsehoods. Footage courtesy Salish Sasquatch. Matthew Parrish, a man from East Texas, had moved his family to Washington for one unusual reason: Sasquatch. That mysterious force pulling them into the unknown wilderness was impossible to ignore.
My name is Matthew Parrish, and I'm from East Texas, and we moved here to Washington because of Sasquatch. In the beginning, I was just doing it kind of as a side hobby, going around the lake here, collecting stories, and then we started to have experiences on our own property.
In the early summer afternoons, around midday, something unsettling began to reveal itself. A faint, musky scent would drift silently through the still air. It wasn't sharp or overpowering, just a subtle, earthy odor, like the forest itself was exhaling something secret. It would slip in through the bedroom window, hanging in the room just long enough to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. No one could say where the smell came from, but it felt different, unnatural, as if something unseen was watching, waiting, hidden just beyond the trees.
We first lived in this house when we first moved to Washington, and around 12 to 1 o'clock in the summertime, we would smell this mild, musky smell, nothing overpowering, nothing real strong, just a gamey smell. We'd come in through this bedroom window that we had right here.
It wasn't long before they realized what they were truly dealing with. It wasn't a bear or any ordinary animal lurking in the woods. No, it was something far more elusive, something that had only been whispered about in legends. They were facing Sasquatch. He showed the very rock used that night. It still remained, carefully kept, a silent reminder of everything they had experienced.
And we didn't really know what that was. We thought maybe a bear at first. And it wasn't until later on when we moved out of this house and we moved into the house next door right here where we started to really experience some activity. And it wouldn't be until my parents actually came for a visit.
As he began to head back into the house, the silence was absolute. No sounds, nothing but stillness. When he reached the corner of the house, he glanced back one last time, just to see if it was following. That's when he saw it again, a pair of glowing red eyes fixed high up in the tree. How it had closed the distance so quickly, without a single sound, was a mystery that sent a chill down his spine.
And so I start to go back into the house, and it's dead silent. I don't hear anything. And when I got to the corner of the house, I looked back one last time, to see if it was following, and there was a set of red eyes again right up here on the tree. How it closed that distance in that short amount of time, I don't know, that without me hearing it.
There weren't any real trees in that exact spot, just a brushy, scrub-covered patch of ground. Trees surrounded the area, but that section was unusually open. He pointed to the ground. The earth was soft, almost mushy in places. A fresh branch lay nearby, but just between those two trees was something more telling, a narrow trail, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. That was where they found the footprints.
Well, that's new. There's a branch right there, but this is actually, you go right up in between those two trees, and that's actually a trail that they use. We found footprints right here. So not only do they come out, but this trail breaks around, it goes around a tree and it comes out on the road. And then there's one that enters here, and then it comes back and it goes all the way back behind those bushes.
Later, while checking one of the game cameras, he heard two sharp whacks from somewhere just behind it. He froze, listening, eyes scanning the woods. And then, movement. Something was approaching from behind, off to his left. It would take a few slow steps, then stop. Another few steps, then silence again. It moved with a kind of intelligence, as if it knew he was listening, but instead of turning around, he kept still, heart pounding, eyes fixed ahead. The thing kept coming, pausing just long enough to raise the hair on his neck each time it moved. And in that deep silence, as the quiet footsteps came closer and the air felt heavier, one question stayed in his mind. What kind of creature watches, but refuses to be seen? What do you think was out there? Footage courtesy, Hellbent Holler. The air was thick with a suffocating silence, broken only by the faintest rustle of unseen movements. Two investigators had ventured deep into the wilderness, drawn by rumors of the ancient, forgotten place. Isolation pressed in from every side, like invisible eyes watching.
This place feels like mystical.
It feels mystical. It feels old. It feels isolated.
Those two.
This is definitely gonna be scary at night.
Yeah. This is,
like it's a place we're not supposed to be.
I mean, the first little X mark that we found on the ground.
The ground seemed to pulse with an unseen heartbeat, as if the place itself were alive, waiting for night to take hold. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, strange trees caught their attention, twisted and bent unnaturally, almost as if they had been forced into those shapes. The branches curled like skeletal fingers reaching out, casting long, distorted shadows in the fading light. The symmetry was too perfect, too deliberate, making the forest feel less like nature and more like a trap designed to confuse and unsettle. An unsettling feeling settled over them.
This is about the same size as that one over there, and they're bent the exact same way and then pinned down with this one.
Very symmetrical.
Yeah.
Very, very, very symmetrical. And very odd. I don't know.
Before they could investigate the wilderness, something else caught their attention just off the path. He paused, glancing toward a small clearing. Wait, before we check that out, let's look at this. As they stepped closer, a sudden high-pitched ringing pierced the air. The man winced. My ears just started ringing. Do you hear that? Just weird, really high-pitched. Lying in the grass was a massive chunk of quartz, partially buried in the earth. Two thick branches, broken off at nearly identical angles, lay symmetrically on either side of it. At their ends, smaller shards of dirty quartz were wedged into the bark, as if intentionally placed. The arrangement felt deliberate, ritualistic, almost. Neither of them spoke for a moment, both sensing that this wasn't just another oddity. Something out here was leaving signs.
There's a balloon in the tree back here. That's fallen. Oh, wait. Before I go check that out. Yeah, weird. Before I go check that out, let's check this out.
Whoa.
They found a mysterious cave hidden deep within the dense thicket, its entrance swallowed by shadows and overgrown brush. His voice dropped to a whisper. It would be an ideal spot for something to hide. The girl moved closer, carefully pushing aside branches to peer into the unnerving stillness within. The air around the cave felt heavy, almost alive, as if it held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Both sensed it wasn't just a simple refuge, but a place claimed by something ancient and unseen, lurking silently just beyond the darkness. What do you think this means? Coincidence or something more? And is it still watching because it doesn't feel natural? Footage Encounter Destination America. When Hawking Hill rises high, they pursue hogs, traps laid and ready. They had caught something, and it was big. The heavy trapdoors had slammed shut with a thud that echoed through the trees. Dust lingered in the air as the team rushed over, hearts pounding. One of them checked the mechanism. Everything was locked tight. Inside the trap, something moved. The metal creaked under the weight. It wasn't just any hog. This one was huge. They could hear it breathing, heavy and deep, pacing within the cage.
Easy. Is he in there? I got something on there. We got, Jeff. I got something big. Doors is closed. Man, we got something huge in that trap.
He's in there, one of them said, eyes wide. He's really in the trap. It had taken days of tracking, baiting, and waiting. Now, they had what they came for. What kind of hog is that? One of the crew asked, eyeing the massive animal thrashing inside the trap. The trapper stepped closer, squinting at the beast with a knowing look. That's a Russian wild boar, he said firmly. You can call it whatever you want, but I'll tell you exactly what he's crossed with. He's mixed with a domestic hog, probably from a nearby farm that let one loose years back. But make no mistake, he nodded at the thick bristles and long tusks. He's mostly Russian, built for the wild, tough, aggressive, and smart. They could hardly believe the size of the hog trapped inside the cage. One of the men estimated he weighed at least 800 pounds. His shoulders were broad and muscular, stretching wide across his frame. They walked slowly around the trap, studying the animal from every angle. By rough measure, he looked to be nearly 8 feet in length. The trap itself was 10 feet wide, and the hog came within just 2 feet of filling it completely. The metal groaned under his weight as he shifted his stance. Without a doubt, it was the largest wild hog any of them had ever seen. But here's the real question. How many more monsters like this are still out there, roaming wild?
That son of a bitch is mean.
I bet he weighs 800 pounds at least.
Oh, my, look how far across the shoulder.
Oh, look how wide, how long. He's what, 8 foot long?
Every bit of it. Like
3
I say,
foot
that
wide?
cage is 10 foot wide, and he's only 2 foot short of that.
Well, yeah.
That's definitely the biggest hog in the wild I've ever seen.
Oh, without a doubt.
Catching something in the trap was always exciting. Many times, creatures managed to slip away. But tonight was different. It was a major victory for the Ames team. There was a loud round of applause. The team burst into cheering. They had solved the mystery of Hogzilla. He was truly a monster, a giant among hogs. He was their monster hog, and they had finally caught him. This was no ordinary creature. It had terrified everyone who saw it. Massive and powerful, it didn't have normal front paws like a bear or hog. Witnesses claimed it weighed close to 1,000 pounds and measured nearly 8 feet in length. That's why his role came in. He worked to separate the truth from the myths in every meeting. In the wild, it's often hard to tell what's real and what's just a story. Footage courtesy, Exploring with Angelo. Once considered sacred native land, the area carried a dark reputation. Whispers of hauntings, strange lights, and unseen movements among the trees. But that didn't stop them. The team set up camp, determined to uncover what still lingered in the darkness. One of them decided to head off in that direction while the other one went the opposite way. He knew there was a bridge out here, one they'd come across before, and every time they did, they always found something strange, something out of place. Angelo with his friend entered the forest under cover of night, their flashlights slicing through the darkness.
So this whole area technically is considered haunted. It was native land at one point or another in time, and the thing is we just don't know. So we're gonna hang out here, camp out for a while. Tent and everything is still in the car, but we'll worry about that after. I guess for now we'll just kind of like wander around and see if we see or hear anything. I kind of heard something that way.
The air was heavy, still, the kind of silence that presses in on you. They were out investigating reports of strange noises and sightings. Locals had whispered about something moving out here, something to watch. A few steps in, one of them muttered, That was creepy. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Okay, there's definitely something moving back there. They stopped, scanning the shadows. Suddenly, a sharp rustle. Close. Too close. A second later, something just tried to grab my leg, he said, breath quickening. The other man called out into the dark. Is somebody out there? No answer. Just the stillness. Just the feeling that they were no longer alone.
I'm like covered in random shit. I think there was just like a worm or something on my arm. All right, who's out there?
He hadn't heard any screams, only strange, unsettling noises drifting through the trees. He couldn't be sure what they were, but what could be making those strange noises in the dark? And is it still out there, watching?
Let's see if we see any stuff around here. As Angelo said, there's been a bunch of people screaming, or a bunch of people, they heard screams from either side of a couple of friends of his that came down here fishing. And, I haven't heard any screams. I've heard some weird noises, but not screams.
Angelo now kept hearing faint movements coming from the darkness behind him. His voice barely rose above a whisper as he called out, "If someone's there, show yourself." Suddenly, a sharp flash of light flickered through the trees, cutting the blackness like a knife. That wasn't just my eyes. Someone's out there. The forest seemed to close in around him, silence falling heavy once again. That was really strange. For a second, it looked like someone was hidden just beyond the trees, watching. And then, a flash, like someone was taking a picture. But of what? Or who? Footage courtesy Jeff Hoffman. The island sits beneath a ceiling of grey clouds. Mist drifts through the pines, thick and slow. Locals say the forest here remembers everything, each footstep, each whisper that cuts through the stillness. In the summer of 2019, Jeff Hoffman arrived on Vancouver Island with a camera and one quiet question: are the stories true? Fishermen spoke of movement along the timberline, shadows that never followed a pattern. Loggers mentioned a smell, sweet, heavy, and strange, that came before dusk. Others refused to speak at all. By day, Jeff hiked through riverbeds and abandoned cut blocks where moss covered everything. By night, the forest changed. Distant knocks echoed through the dark. A low sound carried through the trees, once, then again. Something was near, but never seen.
Annual precipitation. That pretty much encompasses all of the habitat that we find credible Sasquatch reports. British Columbia has that nature of habitat, moist, wet forests. In fact, the west coast of British Columbia and even inland at the Continental Divide boasts some of the largest temperate rainforests on the continent.
It began in the Namint Valley, a place damp and silent even under daylight. There, Jeff found a series of prints pressed deep into the mud, 17 inches from heel to toe, with a stride no man could manage. Beside them, small saplings were bent and broken in the same direction, almost forming a path. Locals told him about eyes that shone amber, not red, like the glow of an old firelight. One logger described a figure stepping from the fog and stopping halfway across a road. It just stood there, he said, too tall, too still. That same week, Jeff's camera caught movement, a dark outline slipping between trees. For a heartbeat, it paused, broad shoulders, long arms, then it vanished back into the trees. Watch yourself. He kept going deeper, carrying sound recorders this time. On a cold night near the valley, a long rising howl echoed through the ridge. It wasn't a coyote, it wasn't a bear. The sound rolled low, shaking through the forest floor. When Jeff played it back, he heard another noise beneath it, a short, heavy grunt as if something had answered. Later, he found new tracks along a shallow river.
For our viewers, Professor of Anthropology at Washington State University, author on this subject. Tell our viewers, what has convinced you that yes, there is a Bigfoot? Well, the first thing that convinced me was back in 1970 when I saw and studied a pair of footprint casts from up in the northeastern corner of Washington. And this is one we refer to now as cripple foot. The right foot was badly crippled, and I tried to reconstruct the likely bone structure.
This time, there were smaller ones beside them, lighter, close to the edge. Jeff began to realize he wasn't just tracking something alone. The pattern felt deliberate, almost protective. At camp, the crew left apples and stones near the trail as gifts. Each morning they found them rearranged, not taken, not eaten, just moved, as if something understood the gesture. On his final night, rain came soft and steady, tapping the tarp above his head. He spoke into his recorder quietly, almost to himself. "I came here looking for proof," he said, "but maybe proof isn't what matters." Beyond the firelight, something shifted in the dark. A faint silhouette crossed the edge of camp and slipped into the fog. He never called it a discovery, only that Vancouver Island holds a mystery, something older than any trail, older than any name we've given it. And maybe some truths aren't meant to be found. Maybe they're meant to stay out there, walking the forest line, watching in silence. What do you think still moves in the midst of Vancouver Island? Footage courtesy. Flash of beauty. Bigfoot revealed. Tom Cantrol is no stranger to the unknown. A fifth-generation native of the American West, he's spent more than 6 decades walking the quiet edges of wilderness, following the tracks of something most people still call a myth. His fascination began back in 1958 when the Bluff Creek discoveries first made headlines. Strange, human-like footprints stamped deep in the California soil. That was when the world first heard the name Bigfoot. For Tom, it wasn't just a mystery. It was a calling. Over the years, he became more than a witness. He became a student of the wild, a veteran, an author, a storyteller. His life traced a path through the deep forests of the Pacific Northwest, the shadowed valleys of Washington, and the cold stillness of Alaska. He didn't go searching for monsters. He went searching for understanding. One morning on the coast of Washington, that understanding came quietly. The river was swollen from rain, the air damp and cold. Tom stood knee-deep in the water, fishing for salmon, when the forest around him fell into silence. No birds, no sound, just the slow churn of current and the echo of his own breath. Then, a splash, heavy, measured.
A newspaper article appeared in Santa Rosa Press-Democrat in Northern California, talking about a sighting in Northern California where a cat skinner had come to work one Monday morning. They were living in camp, which meant they went home on the weekends and then came to work all week and lived in camp all week long. And they were up on Bluff Creek building the roads that Bob Gimlin and Roger.
He turned. Across the river stood a figure, tall, broad, and still. Its fur was dark, wet, glistening with sunlight that filtered through the mist. It reached into the stream with slow, deliberate motion, pulling a salmon from the water as easily as a man might lift a stone. Then another. Each one it pressed against its chest, testing. Some it kept, some it threw aside. Tom realized it wasn't random. The creature was separating the live from the spent, keeping only the fish ready to spawn. That wasn't instinct. That was what I thought. Precision, intelligence. For nearly an hour, he stood frozen, watching it move with quiet authority, calm, unhurried, utterly at home. Then, from the tree line, came a second figure, smaller, slighter, carrying what looked like a juvenile, a family. They moved together with grace, the young one splashing near the shallows before disappearing back into the trees. Tom didn't reach for his camera, he didn't call out, he just watched, knowing the moment would never come again.
About ghost town when we were there, but it had been several years before. And those are the type of things that set me up for meeting my teacher. It was a marvelous thing, I will tell you that, though. It was marvelous sitting there. By the time I got done, it was dark. Everybody wondered where I was, because I took my gold pen along, and they thought maybe I'd struck it rich. Oh, no, but
He said later that it was the first time he truly understood them, not as beasts, but as a people. They hunted, they chose, they cared for their young. They lived by rhythm and reason, not violence. In that quiet valley, Tom felt something shift, a sense that these creatures weren't hiding from us out of fear, but out of choice. Years later, he would speak of other moments, soft whistles in the dark, eyes that glowed like warm firelight, shapes moving at the edge of camp. He believed they knew him, recognized him, that they understood more than we imagine. In his final years, Tom spoke of them with reverence, not as a legend, but as neighbors. He said they lived among us, quiet, patient, waiting for us to be ready to see them for what they are. And when he remembered that morning by the river, his voice would soften. They're smarter than we are in ways we've forgotten, he said. Maybe that's why they stay hidden. From the frozen peaks of the Himalayas to the misty forests of Vancouver Island, the stories remain the same. Footsteps too large, shadows too quiet, and a presence that refuses to fade. Maybe they're not myths at all. Maybe we're just not ready to believe. Footage courtesy Travel Channel. Roger always said the memory came in pieces. Flashes of sound, smell, and fear. He had been deep inside the river valley, somewhere within the team's target zone, when everything went quiet. Years later, under hypnosis, those memories began to surface. The therapist's voice was calm. "Close your eyes," she said. "Breathe. Go back to that night." And slowly, Roger did. At first, he heard it. Water breaking, footsteps splashing in the shallows, each impact heavy, deliberate, getting closer. The sound echoed through the dark until it was right beside him. He could see it now, silvered by the moonlight, a shape too large to make sense. Its smell hit him first, thick, rotting, animal and earth. Then the shoulders, massive, no neck, the head almost merging into the body. He pressed himself to the ground, terrified to move. The creature was covered in twigs and moss, as if the forest itself had grown over it. Roger said it looked like it was wearing the woods, camouflaged in bark and branches.
I hear noises coming from far away, splashing. 2 feet running in the water. Splash, splash, splash. It's real close.
And what happens next?
I could see it in the moonlight. It smelled so bad. It was so big. I got really low to the ground and didn't want it to see me.
The therapist asked if he'd thought of using his rifle. He said yes, but he didn't, because in that frozen moment, he couldn't be sure it wasn't human. It had to be a man, he whispered, but it wasn't. When he was asked if it belonged to this world, Roger nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly, "but we don't belong where they live." That single line stayed with the team. Later, Mireya and Ronnie searched the same river where Roger had been. They believed the creatures might still move through those corridors, the quiet, remote stretches of water that carried fish and fog. As they split up that night, the forest pressed close. Mireya heard it first, a faint whistle, distant and low, then another. Ronnie's voice came through the radio, steady but uncertain. "I'm along the game trail," he said, thinking about making a call. He let out a deep whoop across the valley. The sound rolled over the river and disappeared into the dark. Silence followed.
The fact that he described this creature covered in sticks and fur, and maybe these creatures are camouflaging themselves, using parts of their environment.
Ronnie and Mireya are 300 yards from one another, staking out an area where they believe they may have witnessed Bigfoot activity over the past 48 hours.
But there was some strange whistling on one end and the other. Hey, Mireya, it's Ronnie, can you hear me?
Then, Mireya's voice cut in again, her breathing sharper. "Ronnie, I'm turning on the thermostat. I heard something across the water." The forest fell still. Through the lens, a shape flickered to life, a heat signature at the water's edge, massive, upright, motionless. "It's growing," she whispered. "It's reflecting off the water." Ronnie tried to reach her, but her radio stayed quiet. The shape remained, glowing white against the black landscape, its edges fading in and out like it was merging with the trees. Then, nothing. When Maria replayed the footage later, one question stayed with her. Could Roger have been right? Could these creatures be masking themselves, using bark, moss, and leaves like natural camouflage, hiding in plain sight, the same way a hunter wears the land? If so, it explains a lot. The vanishing shapes, the moments between seeing and not seeing. The silence that falls just before they appear. And maybe it means they're not just hiding from us, they're watching. Case 5. Footage courtesy, Squatch Watchers. In the quiet hills of western North Carolina, stories of Bigfoot have drifted through generations like wind through pine. But one story still clings to the land. The Lyle family encounter, a moment that changed how they saw the woods behind their home. It started as an ordinary afternoon. The grandmother sat on the back patio with her daughter and young granddaughter while the two boys fished at the pond below. The day was still, the air heavy and calm, when a yell broke through the trees. It was long and deep, nothing like any animal they knew. It rose from the forest and carried across the pond, powerful, mournful, human and not human at once. The boys dropped their fishing rods and ran up the hill shouting, "Did you hear that?" Their faces were pale. Whatever it was, it came from the far side of the water. None of them wanted to go back down.
You can tell them what you heard? Yeah, it sounded just like something either knocked or broke back down here behind us. I don't know, I take it back. It's almost like you hit a rock on a tree. Yeah. Like if you throw one and it hits and bounces back. We've got that. And the hillside where I was telling y'all that we get a lot of, maybe like it's being watched and all.
2 days later, curiosity drew them again to the woods. They followed a narrow trail along the creek, one of the boys knocking 3 times on a tree with a heavy branch. For a moment, only silence. Then from deep below, an answer. 3 sharp knocks, slow and deliberate. The sound echoed through the valley, as if something large had been waiting. The grandmother's instincts took over. She gathered the children and hurried back toward the house, forcing through briars and thorns, clutching the little one close. Behind her, the echoes continued, measured and strong. She said later it felt as if something intelligent was mimicking them. What unsettled them most was the daylight. No darkness to blame, no tricks of sound or shadow, just an open afternoon and a reply from something unseen. Later that week, her son Rex got a call from his daughter down the road. Something was screaming by the river. The sound was raw and powerful, like nothing human. He grabbed his camera and went toward it, but the closer he came, the farther it moved, as if it knew he was coming. By the time he reached the clearing, the forest had gone still. Only the river kept moving.
There's something moving to the right of us. But it sounded like something. It's like through the water. On this property, we've had many times of knocks backs and yells back, and this week has just been a hot spot on this property. We had to get out here to do this.
Days later, the Squatch Watchers team arrived to investigate. They traced the same trails, stopping at a ridge that overlooked the property. It felt like a natural vantage point, a place something might be used to watch unseen. As night settled, they tried wood knocks and soft whoops. The woods held its breath, then answered. A knock in return. A faint, distant whoop. Then another. The sound was deep, deliberate, too heavy to be changed. They found new stick formations near the creek, branches bent and woven between trees. It looked arranged, not natural, as if marking territory. Then, from the darkness, the steady splash of footsteps crossed shallow water. The team froze. The air thickened, silent, waiting. Whatever lived in those woods wasn't hiding. It was listening and answering. And maybe it always has been. Footage courtesy. The I Believe in Bigfoot project, high in the Sierra Nevada mountains, where the trees close in and daylight fades fast. A group of hunters once heard something they couldn't explain. It was 1971, deep in the California wilderness, a place few had ever dared to camp. Among them was Ron Moorhead, a man who came to those woods for solitude, not mystery. What he found instead would follow him for the rest of his life. The men had been tracking deer through a remote basin when night fell. Their small camp sat at the edge of the tree line, surrounded by endless forest. As they gathered by the fire, a sound rose from the darkness. Not an echo, not a call from any known animal, but a voice. It started low, almost like talking. Then it changed, rising in pitch, quick, expressive, like language. The men froze. Whatever it was close. The sounds came again, louder this time, moving along the ridge above them. Ron reached for his recorder, pressing the button as the strange voices echoed through the timber.
It wasn't until 1971 when they came out with this story of how something huge was making these rowdy sounds, and it wasn't a bear.
In 1971, Bill McDowell and the Johnson brothers were a little late getting home. This worried their wives, who had heard the stories. They heard that there was some kind of monster up there. They were also told not to talk about it. But Sharon...
No one slept that night. The creatures, if that's what they were, circled the camp, growling, whooping, even laughing. The trees trembled under their weight. But what struck Ron most wasn't fear. It was a curiosity. The voices weren't random. They were communicating. For months, the hunters returned, bringing new recorders and fresh supplies. Each time, the beings came back. The sounds, now known as the Sierra Sounds, became the most famous audio evidence of Sasquatch in existence. When analyzed decades later by a retired Navy cryptolinguist, the conclusion was unsettling. The vocal range exceeded that of any human throat. The speech patterns carried structure, grammar, rhythm, intent. Ron described them as giants of the forest, not monsters, not animals, but something in between. He said they moved with purpose, often curious but cautious, as though watching without wishing to harm. Over time, he learned their patterns, the heavy steps just beyond sight, the mimicry of human voices, the strange chatter that grew louder when they realized the men were listening.
That night, Ron got a glimpse.
It was 1974. We've been dealing with these things every year since 1971. And when Bill and I, my good friend Bill, he and I were the packers with the mules and the supplies that took into this camp. We'd say miles in the wilderness. So he and I had taken supplies in to replenish the camp. And we found a track on the trail going in, which 1974, now this is 3 years after it started with us.
The recordings have never been debunked. Some call them the greatest mystery in cryptozoology. Others dismiss them as hoaxes. But even now, 50 years later, the sounds remain as clear as the night they were captured. Voices rising and falling in an unknown tongue, drifting through the forest like echoes from another world. Ron still visits those mountains. He says the forest feels alive, that when the wind dies and the world goes still, he can almost hear them again. The same cadence, the same unearthly tones carried between the trees. He doesn't claim to understand what they are, only that they exist, intelligent, aware, and ancient. And maybe that's what draws him back each year. Not proof, not fear, but a strange kind of respect for the voices that still linger, somewhere in the wilderness, speaking a language only the forest understands. Footage courtesy: Rocky Mountain Sasquatch. They called it Sasquatch Canyon, a hidden valley deep within the Yellowstone backcountry, where the cold air clings to the trees and the mountains close in tight. For years, locals whispered about strange sounds echoing through the canyon walls. Whoops, knocks, and voices carried on the wind. But few ever went looking. Until now. The team arrived at dusk, the temperature already dropping, breath hanging like fog. This would be their base camp, the starting point into the canyon they believe Bigfoot called home. Beside them, the Bear Wallow Trail wound upward through thick timber, leading toward caves that locals avoided after dark. They moved carefully, studying the ground. Snow covered most of the old tracks, but along the frozen creek they found signs. Heavy branches snapped 7 feet high, New rock stacks beside old ones, and the faint impression of large, flat footprints pressed into the snow.
Brody and Jenny built this, and on our way back we noticed right away that something had made a rock stack right next to ours, like 10 feet away. Ooh, this is slippery. I'm on ice. As soon as we saw that, we started looking for footprints, and we found a trackway. And we even casted one of it. Come from up there is where Brody backtracked it.
Days earlier, they had built a single rock stack to mark their path. When they returned, another stood beside it. Rough, uneven, freshly made. Whatever had done it had come and gone within hours. They left a handful of almonds near the site, not as bait, but as a quiet offering, and mounted a game camera overlooking the clearing. It was always a gamble, like playing chess with something that understood their every move. Cameras rarely caught much. It was as if the watchers knew where the lenses were pointed. That night, the team followed the creek deeper into the canyon. The moon was half full, and the infrared lens painted the forest in shades of silver and black. Somewhere above them, rock clacks echoed from ridge to ridge, sharp, deliberate, answering one another. Then silence. Then again, two distant knocks. They stood still, listening. The forest around them felt alive, not just with movement, but awareness, a presence.
I want to see where these tracks go. You know, this is a pretty good stride. I'm following the stride and I'm having to stretch out. It's quite a stretch for me to keep up with this bipedal creature. This is a real creepy area here. We've smelt it here before, dude. There's a freshwater spring here, by the way.
Soon came the smell, musky, sharp, and animal. The kind of stench that burns the back of the throat. They had reported it before, always in the same area, near the Bear Cave waterfall. Some said it was the scent of fear, others, a warning. Following the sounds, they found more tracks. Wide, deep impressions stretching farther than a man's stride. The pattern was uneven, old but unmistakably bipedal. Something had been moving parallel to them along the slope. Rocks shifted in the darkness. Something threw a stone. Not close, but close enough to remind them they weren't alone. No lights, only the soft red glow of the camera. They whispered to one another, not from fear, but from respect. This was its place. The creature's canyon, the same ground it had walked for generations. Before leaving, they stopped near the spring that fed the creek. The night was still. Only the water moved. Then, from deep within the trees, came the faintest sound. A whoop, low and drawn out, almost human. They didn't chase it, they just listened. And for a moment, it felt like the canyon itself was breathing, aware, waiting, and very much alive. Footage courtesy, Small Town Monsters. In the quiet stretch of land between Ashland and Loudonville, Ohio, the woods seem ordinary at first glance. But by nightfall, something changes. The forest still grows. The air thickens. And for those who've stayed long enough to listen, strange sounds rise from the Mohican River. Deep, deliberate, and close. Sonia Horseman still remembers the night in 2013 when her world tilted. She'd driven to the edge of Mohican Dam to clear her mind, the car parked beneath the last light of dusk. A heavy fog rolled off the water, settling low and silent. She thought she was alone. Then came the smell, musky, wet, like rotting earth. It filled the car, clinging to the windows. At first, she thought it was a deer, but then she saw movement. A tall, broad shape shifting just beyond the headlights. It moved slowly, cautiously, like it was aware of her watching. Then the eyes appeared. Two glowing orange-red orbs, fixed and unblinking, reflecting from a height no human could reach.
They were having summer camp, and it was when the teens were there, and that they were coming like really frightened back to the counselors and saying there was something in the woods, like a man, but they couldn't really see it, with orange eyes that kept looking at them. And then another group of teens saw it outside of the cabin, and some saw it by the fire pit.
She froze. The figure stepped forward, massive and silent, its outline framed by the dim glow of her headlights. Her instincts screamed to leave, but her hands wouldn't move. It wasn't just fear, it was disbelief. the mind trying to make sense of something it had never known existed. When she finally started the engine, the figure turned its head sharply toward the sound, as if curious rather than threatened. Then, with one stride, it vanished into the trees. Sonia didn't tell many people at first. In small Ohio towns, stories like that don't travel far without changing shape. But years later, when she met investigators documenting encounters around the Mohican region, she realized she wasn't alone. Others had seen the same eyes, the same height, the same smell. Locals call the creature Old Orange Eyes. Reports date back to the 1970s. A towering humanoid seen near Lover's Lane, often described as having glowing eyes and a heavy, deliberate gait. Police once searched the area after multiple sightings, but nothing was found. Only the silence of the woods remained.
When eyeshine is noted as a feature of a Bigfoot sighting, the color is often a distinguishing mark. While there are plenty of accounts in which no eyeshine is reported, many others relay the observation of glowing red eyes. This detail raises numerous questions touching on both natural and supernatural issues. When variations occur, they are highly intriguing because of their rarity, making the legend of Old Orange Eyes a peculiar standout. It begs the question, are luminous orange eyes in any way a common aspect?
What stands out in Sonia's story is consistency. The same region, same features, same sense of presence. Researchers believe the Mohican Corridor connects to a larger route of waterways and forest systems stretching across central Ohio, a path large enough for something, or someone, to travel unseen. Today, Sonia still avoids the dam after dark. She says she can't forget those eyes. Not the color, not the way they watched her without blinking. They weren't just glowing, they were aware, intelligent. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept, that whatever's out there isn't just surviving in these woods, it's observing us too. Because sometimes, when the forest grows too quiet and the wind carries nothing but your own breath, you realize the truth that many in Ohio already believe. You don't have to see it to know it's watching. The Appalachian forest has seen centuries of footsteps, but some trails were never meant to be followed. From shadowy figures in the trees to sounds with no source, these encounters may be unexplained, but they're not uncommon. So the next time you're deep in the woods, far from cell service and surrounded by silence, ask yourself, what's watching from the dark? And why hasn't it shown itself yet? Got your own eerie encounter? Drop it in the comments, we're listening.